Welcome back to the 4A Baseball Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we have arguably one of the most interesting profiles, projections, predictions, baseball that there is. It's the Cardinals and the Brewers. Now, these teams have been balancing back and forth besides 2020, since 2019, for the top of the NL Central. And some may look at the Brewers as a underdog or not as good, but they are right there with the Cardinals. And we're going to see if that is true today as we break down both teams. How are you doing today, boys?
Doing good. I'm excited to talk about these two teams because at the end of the day, I really predict one of these teams will not make the playoffs and the other one will obviously make the playoffs. This will be the battle of the NL Central. Stev?
That's definitely true. I think the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals are honestly in a league of their own when it comes to the NL Central. But I also think the Brewers are definitely going to give them a run for their money. I don't think they're going to roll over and die.
Interesting. So last year, I guess the reason the Brewers left a bad taste in their mouth, even though they went 86 and 76, they held the NL Central for 3 of the 6 months of the season. And then they traded Josh Hader away at the trade deadline. Freddie Peralta and Brandon Woodruff missed most of the season. And ultimately, things just kind of fell apart towards the end. And 86 and 76 is still good, but by the standards we set for them, it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, and I feel like this team kind of did crumble at the end. And I'm not sure about some of these offseason moves that we're going to talk about. It's kind of like they did fumble a bit of a bag here, and they did have a postseason team. And I don't know if they're still considered one for me. You want to get into our offseason moves? I mean, their offseason moves.
Yeah, I can pick that up. So they lost names like Andrew McCutchen, Omar Narvaez, Taylor Rogers, Jace Peterson. They sent Hunter Renfroe to the Angels, Colton Wong and Cash to Seattle, and Asher Ruiz to Oakland in that three-team Sean Murphy deal. For Hunter Renfroe, they got Jansen Junk, Elvis Paguro, and Adam Seminaris. And the Colton Wong deal, they got Jesse Winker and Abraham Toro. And in the Escher Ruiz trade, they got William Contreras and Joel Payamps. Outside of that, they got Owen Miller, Bryce Wilson, Wade Miley, Brian Anderson, and they just signed Luke Voigt to a minor league deal. So they did lose a lot, but I mean, I like what they got back in most of the trades, and I think the signings that they did make are beneficial to them. What do you guys think?
I
I
dislike this offseason. I don't.
I'm on the
Brad, what do you
opposite
think?
I don't
I like
hate
it.
it.
The only thing I really
I
do
don't
dislike
at
is the
all.
Renfro trade. Though that's the only one I genuinely dislike. Everything else is like kind of a win in my eyes, at least. Still like he's exiting the prospect phase, but still has the opportunity to mature. Jesse Winker rebound. He's going to be in the NL Central. He hits great against the NL Central, and then obviously they got William Contreras
Yeah.
for absolutely nothing.
And that was the thing I was going to highlight. That is the one win for the offseason for them. They lost so many bullpen pieces. They lost Boxberger, they lost Hader, they lost Rogers. This was considered the best bullpen in baseball, like one of the best built bullpens ever, and the best pitching staff in general. And now the remainder of that is just Devin Williams. There's not much left. There's not really big names in that bullpen anymore. And a team that was so heavily reliant on pitching last season now kind of has to shift away from that. And I think they did make up with that for some good bats in the lineup, but like I just don't think it's enough for them. And they're just I don't know. There's a couple players I think might break out offensively, but they are just not the pitching dominant team that I once saw.
I think you
I
guys
mean,
kind of forget that the Brewers are actually kind of a semi-decent hitting team, or at least were last year. Last year they were 10th in the league in OPS. So let's
Yeah,
not
and that
ignore
that
that
was that
fact.
was led by the yeah.
I mean, I don't hate the offseason. Was it the best offseason we've talked about so far? No. Is it the worst? No. I think it's they've added pieces, they lost pieces, they made some good trades, they made some bad trades, but they went out and I think they did what they needed to do. I do think they need a little more bullpen help. Hopefully they will get that throughout the season. If they really want to try and make a run for the postseason, which I think they do.
I
The thing
mean, they
is,
have a potential reliever of the year. They have they have Devin Williams. He could be the reliever of the year. It's just there's no such thing as a one-man show in a bullpen. It's hard to, to run the league with one guy running it. You're going to need more pieces. And honestly, if you had retained any of these guys in Josh Hader, Taylor Rogers and Boxberg, any one of these guys, you would have a considerably better team.
I think that the thing with the Brewers, some teams, especially like the Brewers, ones that are trying to manage a budget, right? You have to win some to lose some. Or lose some to win some. Sorry, I said that backwards. But I think their only real loss was Hunter Renfroe.
Yeah.
I think Taylor Rogers is a big loss, especially in a weak bullpen like we've been talking about. I think that's a big loss. Hunter Renfroe is a big loss. Outside of that, McCutchen's aging, not really anything big. Omar Narvaez, definitely not anything big. Colton Wong, maybe a loss, but I mean that's just depending on how you're looking at it. And then you gave up Esteury Ruiz for a much needed upgrade at catcher.
Yeah, I think Colton Wong's pretty valuable. Obviously a bit of a down season last year offensively, but the defense was not there last year. The outs above average were severely below average, but Colton Wong over his whole career is known to be a good fielder. And I don't know.
I think he's gonna strive well in Seattle.
Yeah, you just hope it doesn't come back and bite you in the butt later on. I'm not sure how I feel about that one, but obviously, like Brad mentioned, I think Hunter Renfroe is the biggest loss for them. But they do have a young guy coming up in Garrett Mitchell, who I think will provide some pop. There's a couple other guys that could be bouncing back. You obviously have the home run threats in Rowdy Tellez and Willie Adames in that lineup, and now William Contreras. There's a lot of power threats in this lineup now, so I feel like you're not necessarily losing out too much on the loss of a bat. I'm more worried about the pitching side of things for the Brewers.
Well, getting into that pitching, it's still one of the best rotations in all of baseball. Like, yeah, you've got Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff and Freddie Peralta, but you got Eric freaking Lauer, like ace of the future right there. You got Wade Miley, who's a solid option. Like Wade Miley is a solid option. And then the Brewers had been going with a 6-man rotation sometimes. I don't know if you can do that this year, but if they do, they've got the options of Aaron Ashby or Adrian Hauser. Adrian Hauser, I believe, randomly a couple years ago had the most valuable pitch in baseball, his sinker, which is just a really random, just like dude to have the best pitch. But yeah, I mean, Aaron Ashby is a very talented pitcher. He was injury plagued last year. He's got the bowling ball slider. So, maybe he gets an opportunity to run to get in starting rotation.
The only reason I know Hauser is because he iconically just throws up randomly when he gets shaken up. I don't know if you guys seen the clips, but he just throws up randomly. If you want to put a clip in there, but I do like this starting rotation. I think my concerns come in the bullpen. Brad, you want to highlight the bullpen?
Well, you got Devin Williams. Obviously, we know 2020 Rookie of the Year. Matt Bush had a really good breakout for himself last year. Peter Strzelecki, which is really freaking difficult to pronounce. Hobby Milner, which is a good name. Javi Guerra, Stebbs loves him. They got Bryce Wilson from the Pirates, who also the Braves traded to the Pirates for Richard Rodriguez, who's no longer in baseball. You got Joel Payamps, which is in that Sean Murphy ordeal. And you got Adrian Hauser or Aaron Ashby, whichever one's not in the starting rotation, or they'll both be there. The single inning relievers aren't good. The long relief is good. I think the Brewers could be a team that would really run long relief in Adrian Hauser and Aaron Ashby. Obviously, you've got Matt Bush and Devin Williams, but the middle relief pitchers need a little bit of oomph.
Yeah, I think maybe going away from that 6-man rotation and having a guy for long relief, or maybe just doing both at the same time. I'm not sure how taxing that is on the arms, but having one of Adrian Hauser or Aaron Ashby be that guy that pitches long innings. You don't see that often from relief pitchers anymore, but if you can have a guy that eats up 2 or 3 innings at the end of a game to get to Matt Bush or Devin Williams, that's very valuable.
Brad did mention it. Javi Guerra is he's a Washington Nationals pitcher. I think it was in our 2019 run, every time he came into the game, he
He
without
was so
fail would
bad.
give up a run. He was so bad. He was. But hey, he's still on the Brewers. I would expect him to every time he comes into the game give up about a run. So that's not a good piece you want in your bullpen. Um, for me, again, we talked about it. The starting rotation is incredible. I mean, Corbin Burns, no matter what kind of turmoil is going on between him and the Brewers organization, he's going to go out and he's going to pitch his heart out every single game because that's the type of player he is. Brandon Woodruff goes out, does his thing. Freddie Peralta does his thing. Eric Lauer, potential Cy Young candidate in Brad's eyes. And then you got Wade Miley, Aaron Ashby, and Adrian Hauser who can all kind of do their thing. I think they will benefit from going from a 5-man rotation and having both Aaron Ashby and Adrian Hauser in the bullpen to have both of them play long relief. And then, of course, you got Devin Williams, Matt Bush, that are two players that are going to go out and do their thing.
Yeah, I think my concern, and Brad, correct me if I'm wrong. Freddie Peralta, Eric Lauer, and I think even Wade Miley, they don't go very deep into games, at least anymore. Last season, Freddie Peralta would be like this, like kind of opener type of guy instead of like an actual starter that would go deep into games. Do you think that's going to change this season?
I think last year he was dealing with injuries a lot, and he just had no control last year. Obviously, we saw in 2021 that he kind of showed signs of a breakout. He got that 99 All-Star car and MLB The Show. Um, and he showed signs of a breakout then, but he just really couldn't stay healthy last year. And when he came back, he would be out of the zone pretty consistently, and he'd be at 90 pitches by the end of the fourth inning.
Yeah. So you think that bullpen might have to step up, or you think it's going to be the starting rotation going deeper into games?
I think the issue is Brandon Woodruff. I think he threw 153 innings last year. Wade Miley and Freddie Peralta were not healthy last year. Eric Lauer, like beginning of the season last year, is like when he had started to break out, but he kind of slowed down a little bit down the stretch. It's just looking to see. I think they'll be able to go deep in games. We know Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff can. Ashby or Hauser need to be built up a little bit more, but I think they could also piggyback one another. And Eric Lauer, he had 29 starts last year and he threw 158 innings. So he's averaging 5 innings per start, which isn't horrible nowadays. But I think there could be a bit more depth there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be something they're looking for. I'm not sure if they're going to be a buying team at the deadline, but if they are going to be active at the deadline, that is definitely something they should address.
And it looks like Eric Lauer's
With
just game
that,
logs. They were hurt a little bit by like a couple short starts here and there. He had two and a third innings in September. And really, other than that, it's pretty consistently 5 or 6 innings.
Yeah. Steves, you want to bring us in the lineup?
yeah, let's head over to the lineup. So, off, they got Christian Yelich, has had a couple rocky seasons since 2019. Hopefully, this is kind of his last chance to return into some semblance of that form. Willie Adames out in shortstop. Rowdy Tellez at first. William Contreras behind the dish. Jesse Winker at DH. Luis Urias at third base. Garrett Mitchell at center field. Brian Anderson in right field. And then Bryce Terang at second base. Their bench consists of Victor Caratini, Mike Brousseau, Keston Hiura, and Tyler Naquin.
I think Christian Yelich has become so underrated at this point. He still has an elite walk tool, and he still can hit. Like it's not like he's become this horrible batter that if he doesn't have this bounce back year, he's gonna be out of the league. He's still got the stuff. He still has a very high average exit velocity, high expected WOBA, and the best thing is his plate vision. It's still very good, and he's still pretty fast. He's got the potential to break out again. It's not like he's going to be the MVP he once was, but saying that this is like his last chance to prove it. This is probably his last chance to prove that he's that MVP caliber player. I think it's not his last chance to prove that he deserves a spot on the roster, because he most definitely does deserve a spot on that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was trying to say. I was trying to say he it's kind of his last chance to get back into that type of form. Do I think he'll do it? No, but do I think he's still in that conversation for being like a top 10 center fielder? That's where we kind of stand differently at, and I think he has that ability, and I think he will.
I think underrated. This lineup might be one of the most underrated in baseball. It's pretty well rounded. Like you need Rowdy
I
Tellez
definitely
to
agree
repeat.
with that, top to bottom.
Like you need Adames, Tellez, Contreras, Winker, and 2 through 5 is pretty good. Like it's not the best in the league. It's not like there's a couple of bats like in a big situation you're kind of afraid of. And Luis Urias respectable, and
Yeah.
it's just 7, 8, 9. Like they're going to be prove it bats. Brian Anderson needs to return and prove it. Turang and Mitchell, they're both rookies. They need to show it's true that they're actual MLB talent. And if they can do that, it's a well-rounded lineup, which I could see being a legitimate threat.
I'm sold on Garrett Mitchell. I mean, he came up last year, was hitting for average, had an OPS over 800. And this season in spring training, only 14 at bat sample size, keep in mind, but he's got a 12-14 OPS with a 357 batting average, 2 home runs. He's been pretty electric in the preseason already. Not really like a difference maker, because you can't really have difference makers in the preseason, but you're seeing that he's going to be some sort of offensive monster out there. He looks to have the tools of a 5-tool player. He's lacking on the power side of things, but he could be a difference maker in this lineup, especially in the offensive side that they've been looking for so long. And it's not just that; it's the fact that they have difference makers that are right-handers and left-handers. There's not guys that you can just avoid. You got power hitters like Yelich, Tellez, Winker, and now adding in Mitchell, and then you got the right-handed hitters and Adames, Contreras. There are very versatile bats across this entire lineup, and I agree with you, Brad. I think this is an underrated lineup.
Talking about those prospects, Garrett Mitchell, and he had a 28-game sample size last year. He had 136 WRC plus, which is pretty good for it's a small sample, but in that he was in the 99th percentile for sprint speed and the 96th for arm strength, putting him at an entire out above average. And that can be 6 outs above average on at over 162 games, maybe better. He did strike out 41% of the time, which really, really hurt his expected WOBA, which is actually more than 100 points lower than his actual. But he did have an average exit velocity of 92.9 miles per hour, which is pretty promising. We talked about this a while back about how rookie exit velocity is a good telltale sign of whether they'll succeed or not. And then they got Bryce Turang, who's a second baseman, and he literally fits the second baseman profile. He is a plate control slap hitter with good defense. That is his exact profile. So if he has that good defense, then the Colton Wong train might be justified, in all honesty. Because that's what Colton Wong is. He's an average bat with really good defense.
Yeah, I think that's that's kind of contingent upon. If Turang can perform at a high enough level, or at least at 2, maybe not a Colton Wong level this year, but at some point to a Colton Wong or better level, then that trade will definitely be justified. But if that doesn't happen, then I think it was probably, I'm not gonna say the wrong move, but maybe not the best idea at this point in time. But it does clear space and give Turang a chance to prove that he is that type of guy.
Yeah, and just covering that bench. Do you think the Keston Hiura age is over? Do you think his run is over of being a good hitter? I mean, he has not looked like himself since 2020, and since
He
2020
wasn't
he got
horrible
sent down
last
to the
year.
minors a couple times.
It wasn't horrible last year.
Yeah, I mean that was the best season we saw from him. Yeah, that was the best season we saw from him since 2019, I believe.
Yeah. No, last year he was
Also,
respectable.
yeah.
I mean, as far as being the Brewers' everyday second baseman, I would say that train has sailed. I would say he's probably going to be a good rotational piece, bench piece, and probably he'll probably fill in the outfield when he does get starts.
Yeah, I think he's a fine bench bat to have. Every team needs a Keston Hiura.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think there's a decent amount of depth on this team. Not a crazy amount, but there is some value on this bench as well. Are you guys ready to get into your predictions?
Yeah.
I think so. I'll kick it off. I had them going 85 and 77. MVP and Cy Young, I both have as Corbin Burns. Breakout player, William Contreras. I mean, I think out of everyone on this team, I think he definitely has the best chance of breaking out. He kind of gets to solidify his spot as that everyday catcher, and he really doesn't have that much competition. I think he will definitely break out in some capacity. And then most important, I have Christian Yelich. I want him to not necessarily come back to that 2019 form, but to some semblance of that 2019, like somewhere in between like where he is right now and 2019.
I'm right. I'm right around there with you with the same record. Actually, not same record. 84 and 78. One game off.
Okay.
Team MVP, I had Willie Adames. He's been progressively getting better every season. I think he's a pretty safe bet. Most important player, Steps right there with you. Christian Yelich, obviously an important season, big turning point for him in his career. He needs to be the thump bat that he once was, because when he was a thump bat, he was the only thump bat, and now you're in a lineup full of good bats. Having that Christian Yelich form back would be such a difference maker. And then for the Cy Young, I have the actual Cy Young winner, Corbin Burns. And then the breakout player, I have Garrett Mitchell. I feel like that's a easy one to go with because he has been showing his hit tool his entire time on the majors.
So this record is a bit
Oh, no.
reflective of who I have winning, either finishing first or second in Cy Young voting. For my reference, the MVP and Cy Young is Corbin Burns. My record is 88 and 74. And it's relatively foreseeable. The Cardinals, I could see the Cardinals taking a big hit, especially since they don't have much starting pitching, which is where the Brewers kind of excel. The Brewers lineup's actually like pretty solid. I kind of believe in those rookies. So there's a bit of skepticism about Terang's bat, but the defense is clearly there. For their most important, I put William Contreras, because if they don't have him, there's a hole in their lineup right there. And it kind of just makes, it's not really that the trade is bad. It's just you kind of don't have a catcher now. And he's not the best defensive catcher, at least right now. He could get better. And then for their breakout, it's not much of a breakout, but more of a rebound. I put Jesse Winker. I think he's going to succeed pretty well. I don't think he's going to be Cincinnati Great American Ballpark Jesse Winker, but I think he'll be a pretty effective contributor to the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, I definitely like all those picks. I like all Tom's picks too. I don't really think there's a way you can go wrong. As far as ceiling goes, I would say it's probably around Tom, or not Tom, around Brad. Like 88 to 90-ish wins would be their ceiling. As far as their floor goes, I'm assuming that like Contreras gets hurt, Mitchell and Terang are not good. Brian Anderson doesn't have a decent bounce back. Christian Yelich can't do anything. Willie Adames is trash. Then like I'm saying like 80 wins.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this is a fairly volatile team just because there's a lot of players that we speculate might have these breakout seasons, like Yelich having a bounce back, Jesse Winker having a bounce back, and a couple of these guys having breakout seasons. I feel like there's a lot of reliance on some certain players, and when you have a lot of reliance on certain players, that means you have a high volatility rating. And I honestly think if everything goes right, they could be easily the NL Central champs. And they could easily break that like 92 win threshold. But I don't expect that to happen, obviously. So I think they're gonna fall around that 85 to 84
What's
win
your
area.
floor?
I'd say the floor is right about 80. I think if everything goes bad, they might sell because they've been selling a lot. They got rid of they got rid of Josh Hader. They got rid of
If they're not good, they're definitely selling Corbin Burns.
That's what I'm saying. And you guys both had Corbin Burns as your MVP and Cy Young. What happens when your MVP and Cy Young go away? Your team
He
gets a little
goes
bit
to the
worse.
Cardinals.
Yeah, the team's just it's going to be bad if nothing works out. If they do sell, which by the way they shouldn't have sold last year. That was a horrible idea.
I don't think they were selling. I think they were trying to more retool.
You don't trade the best
I think
reliever in
because I think they
Hader was
wanted.
caught.
I think
Hader
they
was
wanted to
cost.
give Devin. Okay,
Yeah.
I think they were trying to give Devin Williams more responsibilities.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
Brad, what
counter
do you
with
what do
a
you got with the
floor of
volatility?
volatility high. And this is a situation where they're like 10 games out at the trade deadline, right? Like they're well below 500 and they just sell. I could see them going about 75 wins because I don't think it's just Burns that goes. I think it's Willie Adames that goes. Because I think there's a certain team, otherwise known as the Los Angeles Dodgers, who would pay a good price for Willie Adames.
Question: if they sell, do you think anyone takes a chance on Yelich?
Yes.
No, because remember
And
he's
If Yelich
locked
is
in for
healthy.
and
9 years,
this
the 9-year contract.
Oh yeah, you got a very no. I don't think this is gonna look like a Nats or Cubs selling like fire sale. This is gonna be more of like a quick retool because you got a lot of young guys coming up, and you honestly in Milwaukee have built a pretty nice core of players. I mean, we just looked at that lineup that they assembled. It's pretty nice. I think when it comes to selling at the deadline, it's gonna be mostly pitchers and maybe the players that are about to hit free agency, like Willie Adames. So I don't think they're gonna do a full sell and just become awful like the A's or the Nats or the Cubs when they did sell the teams. I think they'll just be doing a little bit of a retool, couple guys going off the board.
They
I don't think their floor is that
they
low. So that's pretty good.
don't have any really good pitching prospects. Like I'm looking at their top
They're a
their
team that
top
doesn't
rankings.
need
Their best pitching
prospects.
prospect is
They can develop
That's
very
fair.
well.
but their best one is Jacob Misiorowski, and his ETA is 2025.
And also
6'7".
you can always trade Corbin Burns for pitching
That's fair
prospects.
for
You
pitching
know, like
prospect. I guess
so
that's a
so
fair point.
you can just pretty much just restart the cycle all over again and then develop because it's the Brewers. They're going to develop pitching. I think this team has a good formula for success. I just think the way that they randomly sell because they're pretty cheap, and it's not their fault that they're cheap, but that is kind of destructive for them.